Oh, casualty. It's wrap-up season. Obviously today we are back with another monthly reading wrap-up, and I had another really fun reading month. Oh, let me get my stats. I'm just doing the calculations, guys. Bear with me for a second. I know there are apps that do this for you. I'm not good at using apps. I like my bullet journal. Okay, let's talk stats. In total, I read 19 books. I read 10 of the 13 books that were on my TBR, which I'm quite proud of, not gonna lie. I feel like I don't ever follow my TBR very well, so I'm proud of that. I read 7,597 pages, which means the average length of the books that I read was 399 pages, which is kind of higher than I thought, but I read a few bigger books this month. The shortest book that I read was 80 pages, which was a novella, and the longest book that I read this month was 645 pages. I read 2 romance books, 7 fantasy, 2 mystery, 4 dystopian, 2 literary fiction, I think, or just like general fiction, 1 historical fiction, and 1 non-fiction. It is actually so crazy to me that I read the same amount of literary fiction books as I did romance books. I did not read a lot of romance this month, which is unusual for me, but you guys know I've been loving my fantasy books at the moment. So anyway, that's just an interesting little recap. I love talking stats. I read 21 books last month, which was a huge record for me. Before that month, I think my record was 14 books, so obviously a big jump to 21, and I was so sure that this month I would read probably like 10 to 12, which is like my normal average, which I'm honestly very happy with. But I read 19, and I don't know how. And again, I don't think this will be my new normal. I don't think I'm going to be reading 20 books every month, but I'm excited to talk to you guys about it. As always, I don't think your status or reputation as a reader is determined on how many books you read. I think as long as you're having fun, that is literally the only thing that matters. And I had a lot of fun this month. I actually rated a lot of these books very highly. Like, we did not have very many disappointments. I actually don't even know where to start. I'm going to quickly go through the books that I read in my 24-hour readathon, which I'll link down below if I remember. Obviously, I talked about these books more in that video, but I'll give you guys my quick thoughts. So I read Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom. Both of these were 5-star reads for me. I absolutely loved them. They were just so much fun, significantly better than the Shadow and Bone trilogy. And I've had a lot of people asking me, do I think that you need to read Shadow and Bone before you read this duology? And this is my personal opinion, and I know some people will disagree, but I honestly think skip Shadow and Bone, go straight into these. The only reason why I think people suggest reading that trilogy before this duology is because it's based in the same world, and there are a few minor crossovers. There are a few names mentioned in these books that you would understand if you read the first one, but you don't need it for the plot. I feel like it just helps you understand the Grishaverse and the world, the powers and stuff, but you can go straight into these, and I honestly think skip Shadow and Bone, go straight into these. These are just so much better. I just don't think Shadow and Bone is worth your time, personally. In that video, I also finished The Final Gambit. Absolutely loved this. Again, 5-star read for me. I rated every book in the Inheritance Games trilogy 5 stars. They're all just amazing, and I feel like this book really tied up things so perfectly and so well. This is YA mystery, not thriller. It also has found family. Give me anything found family and I'll probably rate it 4 or 5 stars, honestly. It has found family, it has a romance, a bit of a love triangle situation. I am Team Grayson till I die, personally. I've said this before, but I'll say it again. It is basically an escape room in a book, and I just cannot recommend this trilogy enough. And I also started As Good as Dead by Holly Jackson in the 24-hour readathon, and I don't think I finished it, so I didn't get to give you my final thoughts, but I ended up rating this 4 stars. I did really enjoy it. I actually rated all 3 books in the trilogy 4 stars. I really enjoyed this trilogy, but it wasn't my favorite YA mystery trilogy I've ever read. I was just never obsessed with it, but I still thoroughly enjoyed it. Obviously, 4 stars is still an incredible rating. Just like none of the books had that like 5-star feel for me. I will say I do think this book is the best in the trilogy, so maybe I should have rated it slightly higher, like 4.25 or something. But it just took a twist that I was really not expecting. I was definitely very intrigued to see what happened. In saying that, I do think it is longer than it needed to be. How many pages is it? 560 for a YA mystery. I'm not sure if I agree with that, but it was a lot of fun. I did enjoy it, and I do recommend the trilogy. If you're just looking for a little bit of a, I don't even want to say lighthearted, I can't really say that. If you're just looking for a YA mystery, slightly thriller, slightly tiny little bit thriller, like 10% thriller, 90% mystery, definitely check that out. This month I also finally read The Atlas 6 by Olivia Blake. I feel like this book has been my like arch nemesis. I bought this at the end of last year and I was so excited to read it because I saw all the hype, but then I ended up picking it up, I actually don't know which month, at least a few months ago, maybe in like March or April or something. I tried to read it and I just could not get through it, and so then I bought it on my Kindle, because sometimes that helps me. If I'm not able to get through a physical book, I can get it on my Kindle and I can get through it that way. And I think I got to like 42 something like that percent, and I just DNF'd it because it took me so long to get to 42%, and I just didn't even know what was happening. I didn't really care, and it was just not for me, so I DNF'd it. But I did have the intention of picking it up at a later time because the actual plot of the book sounds very interesting to me. And then this month I actually found the audiobook on my library, so I got the audiobook and I kind of did a bit of a tandem, read some of it physically, listened to some of it on audio, and I ended up really enjoying it. I gave it 4 stars. Again, it didn't have that 5-star feel for me. It was just like kind of odd and kind of, it felt a little bit messy to me, but I can't tell you why. And with the ending, I liked it. It was a good ending, and I did have a suspicion that the character that was involved in the ending was going to be involved, because there was just, I don't know, I just had that feeling, that little sneaky suspicion. Am I gonna read the second book? I actually don't know. I think I will eventually, but it's not going to be something that I rush out and buy unless there is just like crazy hype over it, and then I might get sucked into it. But overall, I enjoyed this. It wasn't a 5-star read for me, but I did think it was a really good book, and I do think it's worth the read. Okay, so next, I finished the Shatter Me series, which is actually so sad. Like, I'm actually so sad it's over, but I'm also glad that we've kind of finished the story and kind of just let the characters have a bit of a happy ending. Yes, there is a happy ending. I don't think that's a spoiler. These characters just went through so much. Like, they deserve, if any characters deserve a happy ending, it is the characters from Shatter Me. So last month I read like the first half of the series, and then this month I just finished it. So I read Defy Me, Reveal Me, which is a novella, Imagine Me, and then Believe Me, which is pretty much an epilogue novella, I guess. And I ended up rating all of these ones 4 stars. I think my favorites from the series were Ignite Me and Restore Me, which were books that I read last month, so a bit earlier in the series. I really, really loved this series, and I did not expect to last month when I went into it, but it just gave me the same feeling reading these as when I read like The Hunger Games when I was like 12. I feel like YA dystopian is just so fun. It's just action-packed, like I said, really fast-paced, found family. I fell in love with so many of the characters, and there is a love triangle in this series as well, and I'm very happy with that, how that turned out. I'm obsessed with these characters, and I think it's probably one of my favorite series that I have read this year. I definitely liked some of the books better than others, but overall it's a 5-star series for me. This was a bit of a random choice for me this month. I just kind of picked it up randomly and was like, yeah, I'm in a Sally Rooney mood. I read Normal People last year and I loved it. I gave it 5 stars. I am one of the people who loves Normal People because it seems like people either love it or hate it. I think that book is just an artwork without trying to sound dramatic. It is so well done, and so I was really intrigued to pick up another book by her. I was gifted this book I think last year, and I kind of just put it off because I wasn't sure if it was going to live up to Normal People. I didn't want to be disappointed, and I also wanted to be in a Sally Rooney mood to read it, and I finally was, so I picked it up. And you know what? I enjoyed it. I liked it. It was so odd, and I would say if you have similar taste to me in terms of fun YA books, fantasy books, romance, rom-com, stuff like that, I don't know if Sally Rooney is going to be for you. I think you just got to try it and see if it is for you. I honestly don't even know what to say about this. Let's see what I wrote in my notes, because I write notes as I'm reading books so that I don't forget what I think. I said, honestly, just very interesting, yet so boring. A lot of social commentary on religion, capitalism, class, and friendship. I said, not fun at all, but also not supposed to be fun. I understand. I feel like that is a consistent theme in Sally Rooney books. They're not necessarily fun to read, but I also don't think the point of her books is to be fun to read. Sally Rooney is not the type of person to follow the formula that a lot of books follow. I said, very funny coming from a YA fantasy intimacy into a book like this, just so different. Feels very intimate to read, almost feels like you're reading a diary or something, because it does feel like you're really reading someone's most like innermost thoughts. Hardly any character development, so it's like really character driven, but there's like no character development or hardly any. Okay, the last point that I wrote on this book, I said, I feel like you just have to accept Sally Rooney books for what they are. I think so many people get annoyed when they don't make sense. Why aren't the characters likable? Why are they mean? Why is there no character development, no plot? But I don't think that's a goal that Sally Rooney has when writing. And I put in brackets, personal opinion. I think they're just supposed to make you think and be about people who are flawed, because people are usually flawed. So they just seem very real. And you know what? I'm just gonna leave it with that. I think this is one of those books that if you're interested, pick it up. Could I even tell you what this really is about? Not really. It's just about 4 people, 2 couples, them just living life. A lot of social commentary. Anyway, I've been talking for too long about that book, so read it if you want. I rated it 3.75 if you're wondering. I just had to delete things off my SD card because I've already been talking for too long. Let's talk about Queen of Shadows. The 5th book, if you include Assassin's Blade, in the Throne of Glass series. I love this. This was the best book yet out of the series, in my opinion. There's like the new plot that was introduced in Heir of Fire, and we're just continuing along this kind of path that has been set up so well for us and so intricately, and there's just so many details. And now Queen of Shadows is just like, I don't know, it just takes off, you know? Like there's just so much going on. Each POV that you're reading from is kind of like dealing with something slightly different, and it's so interesting to be in the heads of those different people and kind of see this world differently, I guess. It's very hard to talk about a book that's like in the middle of a series without giving anything away. All I'm gonna say is I loved this so much, thoroughly enjoyed it. I know this one is a lot of people's favorite, and it just did not disappoint. So if you are starting the series or in the middle of the series, get excited for this one because it's just so good. I also read My Year of Rest and Relaxation, which again, this is not my normal kind of style. I picked this up because I found it at an op shop for $2, and I was like, oh, I've been wanting to read that for a while. So picked it up and I read it this month, and it was oddly entertaining. Like, I could not tell you what was supposed to be happening in this book and really what the plot was. It kind of gives me Sally Rooney vibes a little bit, in the sense of like character driven, hardly any plot, but the main character isn't even that likable, so like why would you even read it to begin with? But I was just like so fascinated and just so like intrigued. It almost felt like I was just being very nosy and just wanted to know what was going to happen, but I didn't actually like the character and I have no idea what the plot was. What did I rate this? 3.75, so like same as the Sally Rooney book I read this month. This is basically about a very wealthy girl in the 2000s. Also, before like a couple months ago, I totally thought this book was set in like this time. Because of this girl on the front, I thought it was like very like historical. I thought it was like historical fiction basically, but it's not. It's set in the 2000s, I think in New York. There is a very wealthy girl, but she just has a lot of problems. She lost her parents and she has inherited a lot of money, so she's pretty much like set up, but she's just struggling mentally, and she decides that the best way to revamp herself, I don't know, like it kind of feels like she's going through a bit of a midlife crisis, but she's like 24. She decides that she wants to sleep for an entire year, and she's going to do that by basically just loading up on meds. And she has this psychiatrist that gives her these meds, who I just cannot believe like she's a lunatic, this psychiatrist. I cannot believe she has the license to be able to prescribe these things, because it just blows my mind. She's absolutely ludicrous and just insane. It's just really interesting. You wouldn't think that a book about sleeping for a year could be interesting, but it is. Did I enjoy it? I don't know. I guess a 3.75 is the rating that I'd give a book when I just like can't quite tell what I think about it because I did enjoy it obviously enough to get through it, and I got through this in like maybe like 2 days. I would recommend it. If it sounds intriguing to you, why not? Why not read it? Oh, actually I forgot. I also read Cultish, which was my only non-fiction book of the month. I actually listened to it on audio, borrowed it from my library. It was really good. I think I talked about it a little bit in one of my vlogs as well. It basically just felt like I was listening to a podcast all about different cults. It's mostly talking about the language that cults use and how that language is very similar to the language that is used by very large organizations, brands, companies, stuff like that, and just kind of the similarities between what some people defined as a cult, like Scientology, and then the language used by places like SoulCycle or MLMs. They use a bunch of examples, and it's just very, very interesting. Like I said in my vlog when I talked about this, do I agree with everything they said in that book? No, but I do think it was a really entertaining and intriguing read, and I definitely want to listen to more audiobooks that are non-fiction, because it just, like I said, feels like I'm listening to a podcast. I'm kind of scared to talk about this next one. The next books that I want to talk about is the Prison Healer Trilogy. I think that's what it's called. If you don't know, the Prison Healer Trilogy is a YA fantasy trilogy. It is about a prison healer, so a girl who works in a prison because her dad got imprisoned, and she kind of just like got imprisoned with him. She got imprisoned when she was about 8 years old, and her dad was the prison healer, which basically just means like the doctor, I guess, for the prison. And so now it's like a decade later, and she is now the prison healer because she kind of learned a lot of stuff from her dad. And I'm not going to say any more about the actual plot because there's just a lot that goes down, and I feel like it's one of those trilogies that you really want to go in as blind as possible. But overall, I was just not super impressed with this trilogy, and I think that comes down to my expectations were too high. I think if I had heard nothing about these books and I had gone in and I'd read them without any sort of overarching thoughts in my head or like expectations, I probably would have thoroughly enjoyed them. But because I went in knowing that this is a favorite series for so many people and people just rave on and on about these, I was just a bit disappointed. In saying that, I rated the first book 4 stars, the second book 4.25 stars, and the third book 3.75 stars, which is interesting because a lot of people love the third book and I just did not. It just felt really messy to me and really just like all over the place, which I'm like scared to say this because I feel like so many people are gonna be sad that I didn't love this, and I'm really sad that I didn't love this. Again, those ratings are very good. Like, I did enjoy this series, I thought it was really fun, but it just didn't seem to compare to other YA fantasies that I've read. It just fell flat. I can't tell you why. I don't know. It just didn't have that 5-star feel, and I really, really thought it would. I would still recommend these. They're still really fun. They're very, very easy to read and understand. It's not one of those fantasy books that you go into and you don't know what's happening for the first half of the book. Like, it's very easy to navigate. I was just disappointed by these, which is so sad because I really, really, really wanted to love these, but I still liked them a lot. I think those are all my thoughts. Next we have Carrie Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This was such a highly anticipated release for me. This came out at the very end of August, and I actually just finished this one this morning. I have no idea why I put it off because I literally bought it on release day, and Taylor Jenkins Reid is genuinely one of my favorite authors ever. I thoroughly enjoyed this. I know nothing about tennis. Let me just preface, I've never played. I have no idea how it worked. So that was a little bit difficult for me to just understand what was going on logistically, because this book is all about Carrie Soto, who is a tennis player, like a very high level tennis player. To give you a little synopsis, we have Carrie Soto, who has been like born and raised to play tennis basically. Her dad was a tennis player and she just wants to be the best in the world. And so she plays her career, she ends up retiring. I'm trying really hard to not like spoil anything. And then she decides later in her life that she wants to go back. And that's why it's called Carrie Soto is Back, because she wants to go back into the competition, I guess, and kind of just have one final crack at it. I think the first like 100 or so pages just goes through basically her first kind of like the start of her career and how she got to the height and the peak of her career. And then the rest of the book is talking about her like retirement and then going back into it and just her journey with that, I guess, like mentally and physically, which was really interesting. I feel like this is not a book that I would have picked up if I didn't know the author and I didn't love the author, because I just don't care about tennis. I don't know anything about tennis. There is a tiny little bit of romance, and also a lot of people ask, do you have to read Evelyn Hugo, Daisy Jones, Malibu Rising before you read Carrie Soto? You don't have to, no. Would I recommend it? I mean, yeah, but that's because I love those books and like, well, I would never not recommend them, but they're all standalone books. You can read all of them separately. All of those books I gave 5 stars, the 3 previously. And this one I gave like, I actually don't know. I don't know if it's like a 4, a 4.25, a 4.5, but it's not quite a 5-star read for me. I'm not sure if that's because I just don't know anything about tennis and that just inhibited me a little bit, but I do have a reading vlog coming soon where I talk more about my feelings on this and just like why I feel the way I feel, and I feel like I'll have a bit more time to be able to just express my thoughts a little bit better. But overall, I still thoroughly enjoyed this. I feel like I've been talking for 100 years, but we have 2 more books to talk about. And I'm so scared to talk about these books. That's why I saved them to last, because I was literally putting them off. But the last 2 books that we have to talk about, Magnolia Parks and Daisy Hates. Guys, I'm scared. These books that I do not know how they have had the publicity that they have had. I feel like book talk is just kind of crazy sometimes. These just popped off like crazy and people were just hyping them up. I feel like that was how it started. People were just really hyping these books up. They were like, everyone has to read these are amazing. And these are debut novels from Jessa Hastings, which is wild to me. Imagine your debut novel just popping off, like going crazy. And I don't think the first one was written that long ago, 2021. So good on her, honestly, for getting her book out there. Pretty much every booktuber that I know was talking about them. And I don't know why, but at first I just didn't seem to really care too much. It wasn't something that I was super interested in. And these books are quite pricey. If for you to buy them physically in Australia, they're almost $30 each, which is just a lot for a paperback, you know? Like, they're beautiful paperbacks and I'm pretty sure they're indie published, so I think that's why they're so expensive, but it's just kind of pricey. So originally I bought Magnolia Parks on my Kindle because it was significantly cheaper to buy it on my Kindle. And I was like, I don't want to commit to this in case I don't like it. So I started Magnolia Parks and I became obsessed. Like, I was addicted. And I finished that book very quickly and I knew straight away that I had to have the physical copies because I loved it. I originally rated Magnolia Parks 4.5, but I've actually gone back since and re-rated it 5 stars. And I've also read Daisy Hates now, and I've also rated this one 5 stars. I am still yet to read the third one. I just haven't got to it. I actually took Daisy Hates really slow because I wanted to like savor it. Like, how dramatic of me. And I also fully tabbed this one and annotated and wrote in it, and I just have so many thoughts. And because I read it so slowly, I like soaked in every detail of it, and that was my goal, and that's my goal with the third one as well. And I'm probably gonna go back and reread Magnolia Parks at some point and annotate it and tab it and do all the things. And you might be like, well, Rachel, why are you scared of talking about these books? And that is because some people absolutely hate these books, despise these books, have given these books 1 star, 0 stars, 1.5, like awful ratings. And here I am giving them 5 stars. And I'm scared. The people who love these books are like absolute stans, but so are the people that hate these books. Like, the people that hate them will not shy away from the fact that they hate them. They will discuss it on end. And I have just seen so many absolutely polar opposite reviews. And the thing is, I understand why people don't like these books, and I agree with a lot of things that people have to say about these books. And so I think that's why I'm so scared about telling people that I rated these 5 stars, because I don't disagree with the bad reviews on these. These books are so toxic. They discuss extremely toxic relationships, probably the most toxic relationships, well, could be worse, but still very toxic. Everyone describes these books as Gossip Girl in London, and honestly, that is the best way to describe them. They are literally Gossip Girl. And if you grew up watching Gossip Girl and you loved Chuck and Blair, this is the book for you. And I was one of those people. I grew up loving Chuck and Blair and loving Gossip Girl, and Gossip Girl is toxic and it's over dramatic and it is problematic, but it's good because it's just like so bad that it's good, and it's just like so ridiculous that it's entertaining. And that is exactly how I feel about these books. So do I want a relationship like Magnolia and BJ? No, I don't. Do I want to glorify and romanticize the type of relationships that are described in these books? No, I do not. I don't think they're a good example of a loving relationship. I don't think they are nice people, really, but they are so freaking entertaining. Like I said, I don't want that type of relationship. I don't want to romanticize that kind of love, because no one deserves to be treated the way that the characters are in these books. But it is entertaining and it is ridiculous and it is over dramatic, and it's just the epitome of rich people drama, and I love rich people drama. So in conclusion, do I recommend these books? Absolutely not. But do I love these books? Yes, I absolutely do. Yes, I absolutely did rate them 5 stars whilst acknowledging how problematic they are. Like, I have not been this excited about a book and like obsessed with the book and obsessed with the characters and like found family kind of vibe in a book pretty much all of this year. I will say maybe ACOTAR, but I just haven't found this kind of level of excitement for a book in so long. And so I'm not going to pretend I don't love it, because I do. And also, the writing in these books is absolutely phenomenal. I have seen so many people complain about the writing in these books, and I cannot understand why, because The writing is perfect to me. It just is on the same wavelength as how my brain kind of thinks. That's the only way I think I can describe it. And so it just feels like scratching an itch for me, the writing style. So it blows my mind that some people hate the writing, because I love it. If nothing else, if even the story was completely different, I would read anything that Jessa Hastings writes, because her writing style is perfect to me. Like I said, do I recommend those books? No, not at all. Because if you read them based on my recommendation and you hate them, by me saying that I don't recommend them, you cannot blame me, because I'm sure many of you are gonna hate them. So don't waste your time on my account. But if you read them and you love them, I love you. And if you read them and you hate them, it's not my fault. But I think those are all the books that I have to talk about this month. I don't want to edit this video. There was so much talking. But I hope you guys enjoyed this. Please let me know what your favorite book that you read in September was. I would love to hear it. And hopefully I'll have my October TBR up for you very, very soon. But I love you guys. Thank you so much for sticking to the end. If you did, you guys are the real MVPs. And I will see you in my next video very soon. Goodbye.